are speaking about creating awareness about national security in the digital age. And hold your questions to the end. Thank you.
So this is a great panel to be having right after the last one, because I think this is going to answer a lot of questions as to why all this has happened. And I'm going to be talking, or we're going to be talking a lot about the media side of this, because I would say that if we're to rate the I guess, national security literacy of Canadians up against other G7 countries, or just any other country, I think we'd probably come near the bottom. And it's not just national security, it's almost every issue in Canada. And I would say a great example of this, before we move on into national security, is the current tariff trade talks with the United States. Because we have such very hollow patriotic propaganda, we are currently in a news cycle where we're trying to blame President Donald Trump for the trade talks failing right after Canada implemented the digital services tax, the end of the trade talks, despite the fact that even Joe Biden's administration had been telling us not to do it. But in Canada, Canadians are not given a lot of news about foreign policy, national security. Canadians don't know what a Calisthani is. We saw an Angus Reid poll the other day where only 17% of Canadians could identify the Air India bombing as the biggest terrorist attack in Canadian history, and it's not even close. And so I guess to go to the panel, I guess because you guys all work in media, what has been your experience with seeing national security issues come up in the media, and what does it ever match up with reality? Maybe we can start with Jasmin, as you used to work in legacy media.
Oh gosh, of course you had to start with me. Working previously in media, I will say, and of course this could vary from business to business, but there were so many things. It was one of the reasons why I left October 7th, as an example, when that took place. Very much instructed, don't you dare talk about this at all. And while they may not say that directly to your face, because they could risk some violations in terms of company policy by doing that, there were so many things when it came to what was going on in our country where you knew not to talk about things, and you knew that you could end up like the last guy who talked about things. And so there was always a very big fear of that. And also, I will say that the vast majority of mainstream news outlets, whether that be local TV shows, local radio stations, they all use the same sources and press releases as CTV and CBC do. And you do not move away from that narrative at all. And it doesn't matter if there's other sources that are 100% credible. If you have a different opinion, you are not allowed to share your opinion. You know what to say, and that is how you are programmed to do your job. And it was one of the #1 reasons why towards the end of my career, which I had for 11 years, I could not stand to walk into a building for another day and talk about things that didn't matter, and to talk about things in a way that I didn't even believe what I was saying. But you have such a huge influence on the world, and you may not think it's anything huge, but you really do have a big influence when you just say what you think. And I think that Canada desperately needs more of that, especially in such serious conversations and topics and things that are completely tearing apart our societal fabric and changing our country so rapidly. And we don't have any way to combat that, which is why some people watch us.
I guess I'll jump on in there. You're coming from the side of, having a YouTube show where it's nice to have your own show, nice to do your own thing, independent media, you talk about whatever you want, but you're still a slave to an algorithm if you want to get views. So, for example, when it comes to elements of national security on the media side, if you utter the words Israel, you utter the words Hamas, you utter the words of anything of that conflict between those two countries, or Palestine and those two countries, algorithm says, nah, you're going way down in the algorithm. We're not talking about that. However, the algorithm hasn't updated itself enough to downgrade anything when you talk about Palestine. They don't know about that. That just shows you the element of education around that even YouTube's like, what the heck are those guys? And that is something I find very, very fascinating, and something I've even seen talking about some of the more contentious topics around national security, is even the overlords of YouTube even having their impact in our country. It's very fascinating. And then when you start, you see the politicians, you see their interviews, you see what they're doing out there, and it's the CBCs of the world. And again, it's a very sterilized perspective on the world and what you can and cannot say, and you will be penalized, whether it be through an algorithm or through your job or through any other means socially. They make sure that is controlled, and it takes someone who says, I don't care if it only gets X amount of views, this still needs to be talked about. I don't care if I lose my job or it's a little contentious with my friends, I still need to talk about this. And I know some people are in that spot, some people are not in that spot, and everyone has their own issues, but that's something we're seeing too.
And I'm going to throw it over to Clyde in a second here, but I do want to mention just how easy, again, and this is the advantage of the digital age of being able to expose extremists. It's so easy to show the Canadian public what these people are like. And if you had any sort of budget, you could drive these people out of mainstream politics forever. The Calistani movement is utterly terrified of a kid named Mocha on social media who can walk to events and film them. Same thing with Mr. Daniel Boardman. By merely walking to an event and filming it and showing people screaming "Kill Modi" that somehow the CBC reporters never see, these people are harassing them every time they come within 100 meters of one of their events because they know what's going to happen if more Canadians know what these guys are all about. It's that kind of, they want to seem tough, but they can't handle Mocha, a kid on YouTube with a camera.
So we've talked about the sort of institutional side of things with the platforms, YouTube, Facebook, that kind of thing. You could get shut down for saying certain things, but then there's the mob brigading side of things. So user-based side of things where you'll have particular groups come in and just completely hound a creator or somebody, even just a private citizen who just wants to put out their opinion. And this is another attempt to thwart people's freedom of expression, to get out there and actually say what it is that they see as an issue in society, something that they have a grievance with. And there are big groups behind this that are willing to put tons of resources into trying to shut people down and what they're trying to say online.
China.
Well, it's the woke Marxist tactic of brigading. The amount of people who actually hold the views of these organizations, of these movements, is minuscule. But especially in Canada with a nomination system where in politics, in one riding, less than 1% of people will be choosing the winner in a safe riding. The thing is, you do start to become terrified. Politicians start to become terrified of, frankly, nutcases who are going to try and convince you of anything. This is something that actually happened with a current sitting MLA in British Columbia with myself. I had somebody try and convince me that Mr. Udaal, who was in the room today with us, he was the one who attacked Just Paul Atwal. It was actually his fault for almost being beaten to death. And then as soon as I challenged the person, well, this is just what the community says. Because there's no media out there to basically get into that community and prove that these are spurious allegations, that these are things that did not happen. And that's what I think we see online is fringe ideas. It's not that we need new laws to push back on this, it's just that people need to be more responsible, that people with fringe ideas that are easily debunkable can survive online and spread their ideology because people will not say anything because you will be scared into the idea that you're not from that community, you can't say anything.
And the one thing too I'll say just before you go on is the only way the reason why we're making sure those things stay low and we don't talk about those things, because if you start getting that noise going, you start getting people understanding and seeing it, then it starts putting pressure on them and increasing that political will to get those things going. If you can make sure that pressure isn't on the politicians, political will never exist and those things will never be addressed. So you can continue on with the lack of national security around it 100%.
Now, I like having this conversation in a public forum because, we've seen a lot of what's been happening on the streets now. It's actually getting to the point where it's like we're seeing real violence. This is literally happening. Now, the question is, though, how is it that we can do something about this while still preserving our freedom of expression in the country? Because I do believe, like, people have a right to go out and protest. And my big fear is that we'll bring to the table some ideas and politicians will run with it because we know they love to run with things that will usurp our rights in the country. So I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to address things like this.
Go for it. Sorry. I'll go for it. That comes down to also the point where it's a kind of a whole other conversation where you have, the mass immigration, you bring in all these different groups and extremist ideas, you all bring them into one spot and they start getting rowdy, they start talking, they start threatening people. Then that's what they're hoping for.
That's right.
Is that the YouTubers, the media get on top and get on their soapbox saying, we need more laws to suppress freedom of speech. And there's like, bing, bing, that's exactly what we wanted. And that is what we will likely see. And that's why we have to push back, be very cautious in how we present these ideas and present and talk about them so that we don't give them that opportunity to bring those types of laws in.
I will say as well, I think it's rather foolish to be of the mind that we need more laws in order to protect people. Ideally, we need people to enforce the laws that we currently have. That would be nice. And in terms of, free speech and censorship, there is in no world, and maybe this is more of a moral issue with myself, but there is in no world somewhere where I am comfortable knowing, and I'm not comfortable knowing that this is our reality right now, where a government body, especially one I did not vote for, is in control of what we see, what we hear, and simultaneously or subconsciously through that, what we believe, what we think, what we know. And I would say if there's anything I've learned from being in this space online now versus being in mainstream, it is truly how many people do not know and how much that propaganda, because that is exactly what it is by definition, how much that spreads because people think it's truth. And when you have bills like C11 and C18, which manipulate algorithms, most Canadians don't know that. They manipulate the things that you see, and if you want to test it out, go do a Google search of any online, just go on, Google, and type in any news headline and tell me on the first 5 pages, what are the article sources? You're going to see CTV, CBC, Global, you're going to see CNN, MSNBC from the States. You will not find an opposing view. You will not find something that shows outside of what the government narrative and messaging is, typically until about between pages 3 to 5, depending on the story, you will. And algorithms don't work like that, by the way. So you will have stories that are actually doing far worse than the center or right-leaning stories, and they are nowhere on that Google search. And then you have, Stephen Guilbeault and the Liberal government bragging so much about Google wanted to pay us $100 million to support Canadian journalists. That is a lie. That is an absolute lie, and I know that for a fact because I was one of them when that legislation was passed. And so it is a very deeply concerning thing, but I also like to give people credit, and I believe that every single one of us, our ancestors have survived so many insane things in order to get us here today, and the government thinks that we don't know what's true and what's not anymore, that given time, we won't be able to figure things out on our own, and that they have to be the ones who tell us what is true and what is not. And I completely reject that notion, and I think it is disgusting that parliamentarians support it under the guise of protecting us and our safety.
Well said.
Yeah. And onto another mainstream media issue, because you're touching on a lot of really good stuff there, and we see this happen over and over again, and it's not bad news, although the mainstream media loves to source just absolutely insane websites as if they're, it's always been this relationship in the mainstream media in Canada. And CBC, CTV News, Global News, they will get their source from Press Progress or Baz News or some other far left or Islamist outlet, and then they will use that to basically launder hoaxes into the mainstream. So what we've seen, especially after October 7th, Over and over again, what you constantly will see is a Hamas news hoax comes out, a rocket hits in the middle of an empty parking lot, somehow 20,000 people died, and they know they were all women and children. And then it later comes out as a Hamas rocket that fell short, killed one person, it was their fault. And the CBC reports the first part, and then they do a retraction somewhere else that nobody ever sees. And this is what is radicalizing younger people these days, is the kind of bait and switch. People see the big news headline, and then they never see the retraction. They watch somebody like Hassan Piker on Twitch telling them all these things are happening. He's never going to give a retraction. And it's because of the way that our mainstream, I guess our institutions work, the education system does not teach kids actually how to be critical thinkers at all. And I'm not sure if you guys have had that.
I'll add to that. So we had a unique opportunity in Canada in 2022. Now, usually, as you're saying, these events, they happen in faraway lands, and we don't see it with our own eyes. So they can tell us whatever they want. They can give us, images of what have you, from video games even. They've been showing us images for footage of warfare. Now, what we had in 2022 was the largest protest in my lifetime happen in Canada. The Freedom Convoy went to Ottawa, and they said, we're not going to do what you're telling us that you want us to do. And they couldn't lie about it, and it was the online effect. It was the fact that people could live stream exactly what was happening at the time in real time. And then there was people like us reporting on it, just saying, hey, look, this is what the news media is saying, and this is the reality of the situation. Look at what's happening on the ground. This is a groundbreaking thing, and it's something that's really upset the propaganda machine, and something that I'm proud to be a part of.
I really want to add to that as well, and I don't mean to get too off topic here, but you touched on something that's been in my mind a lot lately, which is the things that people are taught. And could you just imagine if we lived in a society where in school, as an example, they taught different religions, they taught about different government styles. If you learned about dictatorship, socialism, authoritarianism, if you learned about all of those things, the warning signs, how they work, how they get into your brain, that would be a very real education. But they don't talk about that. What they talk about is queer studies. They talk about, how
That's another religion, by the way.
They talk about how we're marching for Palestine or how we're canceling Canada Day. There's so many things that are deeply important to know about, just for the sake of curiosity, if nothing else, that are not taught at all. And instead you're told, here's what we care about, here's what all of this is, and by the way, you have no national identity, so you better just believe what we have to say.
Yeah, I would even say that that's definitely the current context too from what we're seeing, but even past context, the people even like us who came up through the school system, where those conversations did happen, where they talked about, loved, Nazi Germany, we'll talk about that because that's the big one. We'll talk maybe a little bit about the Soviet Union and happened over here, maybe a little bit of communism here and there, but they always talk about the result. They always talk about, this just happened. And they never, as you said, we never talk about the early warning signs of what happened years before that all happened, right? And that conversation in terms of how to, again, that knowledge of breaking down the early nuances of like, all right, when they start introducing this into the media cycle, keep an eye out because they're going down this path. Those conversations typically have never happened in our education system. And in breaking down that type of nuance, which is such a crime and overall.
Maybe for like a question for the panel, what would you guys say is needed in order to actually get Canadians to care about the issues of extremism, foreign policy, and national security? Because these are usually the driest issues in the paper for the average reader. How do you think that, as creators yourselves, you would maybe work to try and get people to care?
More pain, unfortunately, is the reality of the situation. People aren't waking up because they're not uncomfortable enough. And it really comes down to the fact that, people aren't bothered to do anything about something until it personally affects them. And this is why we need to get out there and explain this to people.
So now we need to pay for bodyguards, and it brings some cost on top of that. And not only that, we face also legal action against some of them. And defamation, it's really wide. So you can just have a bad critics or bad view or opinion about someone, and you can get a defamation lawsuit. I know, I have, I have some. But at Rebel, we are pretty lucky because we have a big team and we have like some lawyer with us. But for some individual, like you guys, that you're alone and you're doing all by yourself, being flooded with like lawsuit can actually kill your own network and your own news. And this is something that I saw from extreme left or other extremists, that they would use those legal action to actually silence the people who dare to show the other side of the story. And when we are seeing in England where you can actually be in jail for a Facebook post, or in Germany where it's two-party consent, so you can't really post something without the consent of the other person, how do you see the future as not only content creator, but also for media who try to show the other side of the story with those conditions?
Well, I think that's why they're trying to revive the Online Harms Act in this next session, is that it's effectively a tool of harassment. It's a bad bill in general, but it's not even going to be an equally applied bad bill. It's going to be very specifically against critics. And so, like, I'm somebody who's facing lawsuits. I'm still fighting through one since December of 2021, someone connected to the CCP, a billionaire. And I would say specifically on the legal front, the way that you deal with that sort of thing is you just fight them to the absolute nth degree. If they're going to start a lawsuit, you absolutely destroy them in court. That you take it to the end and you show that you're not going to get bullied. And I think with the online harm stuff, that's been probably the one front that especially YouTube creators have done a really good job raising awareness about.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is, I think the point you made is like, well, we're one person, it's our only show. The thing that people do not understand, and especially those on the outside don't see, is we're all friends outside of this. We all talk to each other. Moose on the loose, like you name it, we all talk to each other all the time, and we always have each other's backs, so we do not care. And there's obviously small ones here and there, but for the most part, all of us don't even see each other as competition. We're here to spread a message and share what we think. And so, yes, if you want to, screw one of us over, well, we all have each other's backs, and we know our followers and subscribers have our backs, and quite frankly, I don't care. Just bring it.
I don't even want to add on to that because it was fun and true, very true. I think a lot of us, in many ways, there's so many threats that you can get from people who want to shut you up, but a lot of us we've been to hell and back already, and there is almost nothing of any true meaning that anybody can take away from us at this point in time. I can't work in mainstream media anymore. That was my career for 11 years. But I don't care, actually, because I know that I'm following my heart and I'm doing my best to be true. And I have wonderful people like this who talk me off ledges when they come, who give me advice, who have my back and support me. And that's what the world is all about, is it not? It's that community. And we have to be there for each other, certainly. And obviously, of course, there's all sorts of legal ramifications when they come up. So you got to be careful with what you're saying, what you're sourcing, how much you know. And there's also just some really evil people out there who want you to shut up. But the way that I kind of view things, at least, like my prerogative, like I said, is I've been to hell and back. There's nothing you can take from me. I don't care if I'm poor. I don't care if I'm sleeping on a sidewalk. Honestly, I'd probably get more money from the government if I was. I don't care about any of that anymore. What I want is my country back, really bad.
Hey guys, my name is Amir Epstein. I'm the executive director of Tafseek. I do want to tell you that Tafseek has a legal division now of dozens of lawyers, and that we're going to protect every single one of you. If you have any problems, you're going to reach out to us, and we'll provide you with the legal support you need in order to continue doing the work that you're doing. Okay, I'll give you my card at the end, so all of you can call me on my cell phone at 2 in the morning on a Sunday, freaking out about some asshole telling you that he's going to sue you. You're going to call us, and we're going to take care of it. Okay?
Bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Wow.
And I want you to know that Amir does take calls day and night.
Clyde, don't get too excited. You don't need any more friends.
Yeah, right. So I was just going to add to that. So part of this whole thing of being online and having this organic big audience is when we do get in trouble, we have people reach out to us, and people who say, exactly like you just did, people with resources that can throw their efforts behind what it is that we're doing. So if we get attacked, we do have backup. It's you all.
And one last comment on this, because I think it is worthwhile talking about, is this is, if you guys know, he's a really great anti-woke educator, James Lindsay. I think he has a great point when it comes to being in the struggle session when people are trying to come after you because you said the wrong thing, especially if it's happening to somebody else. The best piece of advice he's given is don't let them nitpick the person to death. They said they didn't say it the exact right way. They didn't do it the exact right way. Don't join the mob just because they didn't do it perfect. No one's ever going to oppose the extremists perfectly. So don't start cutting off your own friends because they're not going to be there to back you up either.
I have a question about your experience for all of the panels about freedom number 5. Freedoms 1 through 4 are religion, speech, assembly, and association, but the 5th freedom is freedom of information. Getting the government to disclose records so when you express yourself, you know what you're talking about. And I filed about 30, 40 FOI requests in the last 4 years about various issues. How does it work for you as journalists?
This doesn't have to do exactly with the issue of extremism, but back when I used to not do YouTube and it was just print news, I did it for 3.5 years, I was at one time investigating a corrupt band council in Alberta, trying to find their expenses, people on council. This is a small area where maybe there's 1,000 people who live in this large county area. Somehow they had been, spending $45,000 on travel in a single year. And when I had requested documents just on the expense claims, should be super simple. They were going to send me 1,000 pieces of paper physically, and I had to pay 25 cents a sheet just to have them send me filing cabinets worth of stuff when it should be one single page. And that's happened also with FOIP requests on the federal level. They will make it as gruelingly difficult to get information when they're supposed to be working for you. So the experts on that are probably Blacklock's reporter right now, considering that their entire business is going through the motions of FOIP requesting things that people think it's insane that nobody knew this before they came out with it, but that might actually be a great suggestion for reform on the federal level, changing the way that information gets displayed to the public.
I would also add to that, there was a new report that came out, I believe it was this past week, that showed Canada had dropped significantly in world transparency. It's now second last, actually. So yeah, Canada has a really big problem with that. That started to go downward again about 11 or so years ago now. In terms of finding information though, I mean, my goodness, I think I speak for all of us when I say that we live and breathe this. Maybe a little too much, some oxygen or friends might be nice, but I know for myself as well, I think prior when I was in media, it definitely helped that I'm very good at networking, I'm very good at keeping secrets, and I'm very good at protecting people who tell me things, and that's been really beneficial. I get news from diplomats in the Middle East, I get news from diplomats in the United States. I'm definitely very branched out there. If there comes an event where I can't find something, or I need an opinion, I need something off the record just to help me figure out what I think is going on here and connect some dots. And there are a lot of web pages as well that if there's ever a website that is manipulated or changed or taken down, where you can go and find them in the back end, as well as literally spending hours and hours reading all kinds of bills that are 84 pages long, and the vast majority of it is filled with the most boring stuff ever that I don't even know why it's in there, because it's not even that relevant to what you guys are supposed to be writing about here. But I think all of us do extensive hours researching, connecting, networking, having off the records with people as well. It is difficult though. That is a problem clearly with Canada is second last in world transparency right now compared to other countries.
Yeah. And I largely agree with a lot of that too. And the one thing, kind of going back to your initial point with the requests, is the process is the punishment. That is what it is. We're seeing, we even had, talked about it earlier with the CBCs in the mainstream saying we are no journalism. We are defenders of journalism. However, we will say the first thing out loud as obnoxious as possible to get the people going. But then over here, well, we will put our correction over here, but on a website that's very not accessible, this, that, the other.
That's something, sorry to cut you off, but that is something people need. Well, listen, whatever. You agreed to sit up here with me. Sounds like a you problem. That is something, though. It's actually Clyde who had informed me about the CBC Corrections website. And wow, is that ever fascinating.
I'll give you the TLDR on that one. So the CBC did a hit piece on a YouTube channel, which resulted in the YouTube channel being taken down. They originally wrote the article, or the video that they put out about it was titled, "How We Took Down a YouTube Channel." Then there was public outcry because of it, and a lot of people writing the ombudsman. This is the process that I actually encourage people to do, because there's no FOIA, Freedom of Information request when it comes to CBC, even though it is technically a government agency. But the request was release the correspondence between YouTube and the CBC employees. We still haven't gotten that information yet, but that fight is not over. If the CBC is actively in a role of communicating with YouTube to have people's free speech removed, we need to know about that.
And just a point out about people in the media as well, and you could probably confirm this, Jasmin. The people there, it's not just that they're bureaucratic minded or they're just clueless. A lot of these people are flat out bad actors. Just because they work for a large institutional news company doesn't mean they're actually good at their jobs. That's why I was describing the people sitting in at home wearing sweatpants, putting out 2 articles a week and getting a full-time salary. There's a reason why people like Rachel Gilmore are sometimes still hired into news companies, because that's why the CTV News hired her as a fact checker. They knew it was a bad idea. They like her. That's why they hired her. They knew about her.
I'm sad that they fired her after that, though.
I know, it was easier to make content.
It was going to be
when she was
entertainment
around.
beyond anything in the election cycle.
I just want to add something because he didn't introduce himself. Michael Tepper, who stood up and asked the question, is the president of CEF, and he has indeed filed hundreds, dozens anyhow, of FOIs. So if you have a suggestion as to a question or a request that should be filed, please see him. And I did want to just add that on filing for information with the TDSB on incidents of anti-Semitism, they requested $28,000, so we have not yet got that information.
Hello, gentlemen and a lady. My name is Pankaj Dave, and I'm from Canada India Foundation. I got a question. Since if you see the modern history of democracies, it has been it's a perpetual evolution, you can say, like since Magna Carta Agreement, 1215 or so. But in case of Canada, sometimes I feel like as if it has become standstill. There is no evolution process I see it is happening, and especially in media. Of course, CBC is more talked about recently, but even in case of print media, they say from CIF and even on a personal ground also, we have taken so many very, very pertinent issues, but hardly anything has been heard. And I think how to overcome as a society, I'm not talking about 1 or 2 instances, but the case is larger, because what happens, otherwise our country it's a very nascent country relatively. And we got, of course, the main thing is that like diaspora, conflicts and everything we import here. And otherwise this country can be very, very vulnerable unless the right kind of information, right kind of news is given and it has been spread. Thank you.
This is something I actually also give politicians advice on, especially people just starting up into the space. It would apply to organizations like CIF and TASIF. I would say that you almost need yourself or your organization needs to become its own commentator. It needs to become its own news source. You know, make your own channels, make your own Instagram pages. Obviously connect with creators out there as well, but if it's like if the CBC, CTV News keeps rejecting you, keeps not wanting to hear from you, you can just put together your own news. And frankly, you're probably going to smash them when it comes to the actual numbers because nobody watches these people. So the best thing you can do is you can start starting your own podcasts, your own ways of just even having creators show up in forums and being like here and recording and putting online is one of the best ways of actually getting information out. You know, if you know the best way, like you're usually the best person to actually give out your message.
We launch it tomorrow with this content.
I think just to add to that, in reference to what I had said before as well, it's just, you know, you need to say what you think, and nobody is coming to save you. So you need to save yourself. You need to fight for and save the things that you love and care about and find dear. And it's wonderful when we're able to report on things that are given to us from inside sources and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you know, if there's something that's really important, you don't need necessarily to wait on a CBC to publish it. You need to say what you think and stand up for what you believe in. And not because, you know, you were told to by a university professor, but because you've actually put in the time and research and know, and you care about it because it matters and you know the truth. That's just my addition.
So incidentally, that's how I got started on YouTube. I'm a mechanic from Squamish, BC.
I call him for car advice all the time.
All the time. So I got started on YouTube. It was during the Freedom Convoy. I had cameras and equipment, and I just saw what was happening, and I said, I gotta say something. I don't care if nobody's watching this. I'm just gonna say it so in the future when whatever happens, I'll at least have on my conscience that I spoke out about it. I didn't know it was going to blow up and turn into what it did, but it did. So I would encourage many other people to just take that and run with that, because people might listen to you. If you think that, oh, I won't go anywhere with this, just do it anyway.
A weird piece of crossover, your most popular video on your channel, which is like over 1 million views, was partially based off of a report that Daniel Boardman wrote during the Freedom Convoy.
Small world.
My name is Nitin Chopra. I was for a very long time with the ethnic media, Punjabi TV station, and what I saw all of you on social media and really salute you guys and salute to this lawyer in the room. Applaud to you, applaud to the Canada-India Foundation. I always asked all the politicians all the relevant questions because since we are very small ethnic channels, but the mainstream, you mentioned about all the mainstream, how the irregularities, how they show the news, but in the ethnic, nothing less. They are also a part of it. I know the elections happened. One is the advertising they give to the ethnic. The second is under table deals. Then it hurt us. But we as a journalist or a reporter, we can't say anything because it's that level, the owners level, and they get under table deals. And I also got an instruction during the elections, don't ask any relevant question. Just take their statements. I said, I won't do that. I said, then you keep aside. We will bring a host who can ask just a statement. I said, statements, as budget is passing is a statement. But what public wants, we have to ask that. So with that, the frictions inside the organization started that this guy don't listen to me. He wants to make the politicians or the system accountable, which is our role. But ethnic media, many irregularities happens more as a employee-employer relations also. Because in ethnic, many might be very good, but some of them, they hire the people on contractual basis. Means you are working in their organization full-time, Monday to Sunday. Monday to Sunday is a journalist job. 7 days a week, 365 days a year, working tirelessly, bringing revenue to them. I brought 5 million of revenue to them. I brought numerous stories, everybody knows from here. But what you get in return? Nothing. You don't get anything because they don't keep you as an employee. Means they evade the tax. Tax evasion from one employee is hundred thousands of dollars. CRA tax evasions by these ethnic media. So there is a reform is needed from the CRTC, because you have a vast experience in journalism. I won't ask a question, but we need to find the solution for the media. Like, they should not be biased, they should be fearless reporting. Either you get a government budget or not. But we salute all of you that you took that bold step. And I got an opportunity to bring that concerns of ethnic media also, that ethnic media is not less. They are into hand to hand, wherever from they get the money, they do that. But ethics is missing here in the media. Thank you.
And I think one of the big issues that you're highlighting too is that it's partially a problem of the mainstream media as well as mainstream, like just the government, is that they consider ethnic media that other thing that's over there, and there's no, there's different standards. It's like, oh my goodness, that's one of the most insulting things I've ever heard, when people pretend like it's okay that certain ethnic news outlets will just, again, platform like incredibly extreme people with no pushback, and they're using taxpayer dollars to do it. And then they can also, abuse employees, they can mistreat people. I even saw, it was during a federal nomination, this was a paper, publicly funded paper, and they did a full-page spread advertising their favored nomination candidate in a conservative nomination with all the other people that they were there to support them, like full-page spread. And this was considered just news. It's news. It's like, this isn't news, this is propaganda for your preferred candidate because they're connected with the Calistani network.
Sorry, there you go.
Anybody else?
I talk
Do you have a final comment? Anybody?
Josh and I'm going to try to not talk for 7 minutes. Wish me luck.
I'll cut you off. It's okay.
It's interesting because you kind of both touched on something there about the bias. And I'm of the belief that having a bias is totally fine. It's totally normal. Every single person, when you learn more details and information, you are bound to have a bias, right? I have a bias. The difference is that I openly state my bias. And then you can filter every single thing that I say, the sources that I use, through that lens. Having said that, on my own show, while I do have a bias, I'm also a lover of deep thinking, and I will usually try to give benefit of the doubt, or at least hypothesize on why XYZ is happening. And I think when it comes to ethics, and I know that this isn't technically like a huge violation, but when it comes to ethical media and the way that things are done in this country, step number one, tell us your bias. And then at least people who are watching, CBC or CTV, they can filter it through that lens, and they know that this may not be the full recount of events, instead of people unwittingly who are watching them and, yeah, that's the news for the day, but it's not, because there's a narrative and there's a spin because of your bias, which you were hiding and lying about to the public. And I think that that's where a lot of mainstream has gone so wrong.
And I guess I'll finish up with this because I just think it's interesting. Last August, we've had our show since 2020, but just kind of been, bopping along, doing its thing, just because I was having fun. Once a week with my buddy, we were talking politics, business, whatever. Last August, we covered the vote of the separating Punjab from India that took place in BC and Alberta last year. It was weird. I had no idea who the heck Khalistan was. I didn't know who these people were. I just saw them waving yellow flags, saying, death to India. And we, two Canadian-born people, were just like, why are you here? Why are you saying death to India? What is this even about? And that was simply the question. We put it on the old TikTok, and all of a sudden we got attacked like crazy. They came at us hard, and I was like, who are these people? And they ended up going after my co-host, tried to get him to lose his job. He had to end up leaving the show. Then it turned into just me being a talking head on the show. 30,000 subs. Today, we're at close to 130,000 subs. And my message to them was, you should have left me alone. I was having fun being with my buddies, talking nonsense. But then you came after me, you came after my loved ones, you came after my friends, and then the thing with me is I get a little fired up. And if you come after me, come after the people I love, I'm going to come after you. And that's when I got to meet Kushal. That's why I'm even here today, is because I started talking very consistently about Khalistan, who these people are, what they're all about. And as I said, you should have left the white boy alone, because I came in hot.
That's the best description I've ever heard. Actually, it's from Kushal and Daniel. Best description I've ever heard of modern Khalistani activists, especially younger ones, is just come at me, bro, kind of culture. But they're complete cowards when you actually come at them.
So thank you.
One last word. So on the question, how do we fix the media? Get the government out of media. That's number one. The government should not be in media. There's a conflict of interest there. When it comes to the CRTC and their mandate of content, and when they tried with Bill C-11 to mandate that or to regulate that within our space, none of us are eligible for Canadian content status. That is the most ridiculous thing. Get them out of media entirely.
Thank you, Wyatt, Clyde, Jasmin, and Josh.